So welcome everyone to my talk, Beyond Bridges, How Engineers with and Without Borders Are Changing the World. My name is Erica, and I'm really happy to present this information to you. The first thing that I want to establish is that this presentation is about me to start with, but only because I'm speaking from my own experience and a really basic idea that I had about 7 or 8 years ago. And like any good science-based person, I decided to go out and try to see if I could prove or disprove what it was that I was hypothesizing. So that is the idea that you can take what you love, what you live, the way you live, and build it on something besides just surviving. That you can also model it on something that really means something to you, something that moves you emotionally, something that means a lot to you, and something that you can, really feel good about and that you can believe in. So I call this idea life design, and putting, sort of structuring everything from the way that you spend your free time to the way you earn your money, the way that you spend your free time to the way to to sort of aspire and mold and support your values. So my life is the experimental data. I did graduate in 2000 from Materials and Metallurgical Engineering at Queen's, and I really wanted to help people, and I thought, gee, engineering would be a great way to do that because it means I can get out in the world and I can move things around and I can solve important problems, I think. This just seemed a good way to wield some power in the world and have some impact. And then when I graduated, I hit what I call the valley of despair, where I thought, I have this very technical degree, and it seems like what I'm qualified to do now is go into a company and solve, make stuff out of metal. I know exactly what happens when you put a certain amount of different types of metal together and heat it up to 800 degrees and then let it cool at a rate of 5 degrees per hour. I could tell you what types of crystals come out of that type of metal, but I have no idea what that means or how I can use that to help people. Nonetheless, I needed to make some money, so I went into my first job, which was an automotive manufacturing facility. And luckily, I call it chance or destiny of some sort, I was able to find a way to help people. And it all happened, believe it or not, with this sintering furnace that you see here. This was the key that allowed me to realize that I could be an engineer and that I could engage something that was meaningful to me. So it all began when the belt on this very long furnace, this is basically a big conveyor belt here, kept breaking. And the parts that are on the inside that were being sintered in this long furnace, that were being baked essentially, kept falling out either end. And this was obviously very dangerous. It was time-consuming. It was costly. And we knew we needed to put a stop to it, but people didn't know why this was happening. So I got recruited as a very junior member of the team to help figure out why this was happening. And we came together as a team and we put our heads together and we came up with a bunch of theories as to why it was happening. And eventually we were able to solve the problem. And we prevented this very unexpected failure of the process from happening, and from robbing people of their peace of mind. Basically, we saved a lot of people a lot of stress, as well as saving the company a lot of money. And I thought, wow, I've made life better for about 120 people. And that turned out to be a really good key. And the idea was this set of tools called continuous improvement, which are basically this set of tools that allow you to solve problems, sort of diagnose and solve operational problems. So from there I moved on and did a couple of other things. I learned a problem-solving methodology called Six Sigma, which is very based on statistics, which I had no patience for in school. I really didn't like statistics, didn't see the point of it. But once I was in this industrial environment and I saw how we could use it to make things work better, I really became enthusiastic. And I was now not just participating on these teams, I was now running these teams, and I was facilitating the meetings and bribing people with donuts to come together and give their ideas about what we needed to fix. And I also was appointed the head of the employee suggestion program. So that was really cool because I was interviewing people who worked on the shop floor and finding out how they thought we should be running things, how they wanted to, what we should be changing, for example. And that really appealed to my sense of, I guess, sort of social justice in a way of saying everyone has a voice, everyone deserves to be heard. We all have different types of intelligence, and we all have good ideas, including people on the shop floor who we might not think of as, you know, quote unquote, as smart as engineers or technicians or people who are more educated. But sure enough, they come up with amazing ideas because they're the experts in that process. They're right there, and they have that will to make things better. So I really learned a lot, and I felt really good about helping people's ideas be heard. That was a really great part of that job. So again, I was helping people doing what I was doing as an engineer. A chance encounter led me into the gold mining industry. That was pretty interesting. I met up with a friend of a friend in a grocery store, and the next thing you know, I was working for a gold mining company. Here I was educated in another type of continuous improvement process called Lean, and I was now working sort of at the global office, and I designed a standard that would help us calculate how much money we were saving through our projects, and I put together a best practices system to help us share our best ideas across the company. So I was now sort of moving into the sphere of management and problem solving, which was really exciting for me as well. And I was very excited at the end of my first year. I was thinking I was doing really well, and my boss said, you know, you're good, but you need more operations experience. So we need you to go where the action is, where the mines are, and we'd really like you to go either to Nevada in North America, to South America, either Argentina or Peru, or to go to Australia. So if you know me, or if you paid attention to my new last name, you might know that I went to South America. I lived in Lima, Peru. That's me on the front porch of my beautiful apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And I was lucky enough to live in Lima, and I commuted on a weekly basis out to the mines out here in the beautiful countryside in the mountains. And here I am holding up a piece of wire that had been trapped in one of the crushing machines. It was making it break down. And as usual, we were going on our little detective mission to figure out how to fix it. So Peru is an absolutely amazing country. I was thrown into the deep end as far as learning to speak Spanish. It's amazing what you do when no one speaks your language and you have to learn. I got a week of intensive language training, and then I got thrown in to say, hey, go for it. So again, I was now coaching people on how to do these continuous improvement things, and I implemented the standards that I had developed in theory at the corporate office. So I learned a lot about the differences at various levels of the company and how things worked. And on a personal level, I really saw poverty on a level that I hadn't seen before, and that really stuck with me. It you know, sort of twinged something in my brain and my heart that said, you know, I want to be part of the solution at some point. I'm not sure I'm doing that as working for a mining company, but someday, somehow, I want to help make life better for these people. So I came back to Canada after my international placement. I didn't have a job because they had replaced me. This can happen when you move around. And so I ended up staying on contract for one more year and then leaving the mining company. And I turned my back on engineering at that point. I thought, you know, maybe I need to just do something completely different. And I traveled around. At this point, it was, you know, it was January when I finished my job, and it was Canada, and it was cold, and I had no reason to stick around. And I ended up in the jungle in Ecuador working at a wildlife reserve. You can see me with the little monkey here. And I realized as I was working at the Wildlife Resource Center, which I thought, you know, this has nothing to do with engineering. Maybe I want to do something completely different. I realized I wanted to optimize, and I wanted to solve, and I wanted to improve every aspect of this little tiny wildlife reserve in the jungle. And I thought, boy, just like I had done it at the mine and just like I had done in the factory. And I thought, if I'm this far away from work and my brain is still working in that way, maybe this is who I am. Maybe this is really part of what I have to give as a human being, and I should just find a way to do it in a context that feels good to me. So I thought about that and how I could utilize my problem-solving skills, and ended up in Argentina. So as you might know, Argentina went through an economic crisis in around 2001, and many, many people were thrown out of work. And you'll still see it's quite common in the streets of Buenos Aires and other large cities in Argentina that people will survive by collecting recyclables out of the garbage. They don't have public recycling there. And still up to some 25,000, that's how they make their living, is through scavenging recyclables. So this is obviously a very difficult way to make a living. On the one hand, it's a story of poverty. There are families that work together. There are children who don't get to go to school because this is what they're doing. If it rains and people don't put their garbage out that day, then these people don't eat. They're very low status, even though you could say that, you know, by taking these recyclables out of the garbage, they're keeping them out of landfill, they're performing a valuable service. And you think of, in a Canadian context, they would be paid municipal workers with health benefits and, you know, uniforms and some status and some dignity. So a professor that I had admired for years, I met her at a Women in Engineering conference when I was very young, had been working on a project during her sabbatical, which involved a very simple machine. As you can see here, this is a hot press. So basically it applies heat and pressure to plastic in order to turn it into something else. And the reason this is sort of unique and interesting, it was designed by a Queen's engineering professor specifically for use by these urban recyclers, these cartoneros, they're called in Spanish. So it's very low cost to produce. It's basically a bicycle pump on the bottom and some plates of steel with a simple lever system to magnify the force. And there were four prototype presses when I came on board at various places around the world. So the idea was to help out these urban recyclers who work in cooperatives by giving them some products that they could create and giving them access to a hot press. So they already have the plastic, they have tons of it. It's worth about 6 cents per kilogram, but if they can add some value to it and they have some way to create something that's beautiful, that's worth more, then they can move from being scavengers to being small-scale manufacturers. And we thought this was a pretty cool idea. So it turned out one of the prototype presses and one of the partners in the project was the Rhode Island School of Design, which is a very prestigious design school in the United States. And they came up with some ideas for what you could make with the hot press that were just gorgeous. You have no idea how many emails I got about these rain boots here. Unfortunately, they leak, but they look amazing. And you can just imagine what design students can do with a press. So we ended up eventually, pay attention to this wallet. You'll see that a little bit later in the presentation, because when I came to the project, they had also gotten some product ideas together from the University of Buenos Aires. So Argentinian design students had made these. And I think it's so neat to see what the different cultures come up with and what they think of as, you know, sort of relevant and interesting and beautiful to make out of the same raw materials and the same manufacturing method. So I worked with a cooperative. I was basically the linchpin that connected the cooperative and the university and the organizers and the volunteers and the microcredit organization that would eventually put up the money for the press to be built and delivered. And so here we are testing the press to make sure that the uniformity of the heat was okay. Here we are the day that they signed the papers to get a loan, a micro loan, in order to get the press on site. This is the day the press was delivered, which should have been an amazing day, but I was actually really emotional about how long it had taken. And then, of course, working with the people to help them understand how to use the press and how to make things out of it. So there I am, very happy. Press is delivered. It's been installed. There's a roof over top of it. These things just take a really long time sometimes, much longer than they should. But it was a really fun and interesting process, especially once we started to build a process, just like I had done in my engineering career. You can see we created some nice visual standards here. We had several amazing volunteers. Some of them were artists from the community. Some of them were students. This is the professor in the top left corner here, Caroline Bailey, who came up with the idea. So here we are, very happy with our first prototypes. And you can see this wallet here was actually made by a member of the cooperative. It was her very first shot at it. And this is a plastic bag. It's made of a plastic bag from my little town of Walkerton, Ontario. So this, I took it down with me, and it turned into this beautiful wallet that was made by someone in the cooperative. So here you can see there are a couple different products that we made, and this was our first round of production here. We made, I think, 60 wallets altogether. And they weren't all good, but we finally perfected the process, And the week that I left, I was on the ground for 7 months. The week that I left, they sold all of their wallets at a design fair, which was really amazing. And after that, they did get another contract. And in the contract, they got these trash cans. They ended up perfecting a method where they cut up different colors of plastic and molded them together, so you get this sort of mosaic idea. And then they made the the garbage into garbage cans, which was just kind of the coolest thing ever. Mm-hmm. So it's always hard to come in, especially when you're an outsider, when you're a foreigner, and you don't understand the context. I spoke the language, but I didn't speak the culture, and I didn't necessarily know how to interact with these people except to say, that I'm a caring human being who wants the best for you, but I have no idea how to work with you effectively. And that was just a really humbling experience. It was fantastic. And I learned that, my engineering skills are totally applicable to the challenges of social movements, international development. I've since found out about the grand challenges of engineering, which is sort of like a master list of all the things that engineers could work on, some of the biggest challenges in the world, like making solar energy economical, like making cyberspace safe. They really subtend all of these different areas and disciplines of engineering. And, if you want to make a difference, you can. That was, I think, the biggest thing that I proved to myself when I went on this little journey. I also learned, in engineering school, sometimes we get the message directly or indirectly that we're really smart and that we're more valuable, our skills are more valuable and they're better than other people's, or maybe even that we're better than other people. And I would say that going out into the world and doing something like this that's just so complex and interesting and challenging really gives you that humility to say, there are things I know and there are things I'm good for, my engineering skills are good for, and man, is there a lot I don't know. And you really need to learn how to respect those other skills and partner with other people that have those skills that you don't have. And another thing I sort of learned, remember I said the day we delivered the press to the cooperative should have been this triumph. It had taken so long and we'd had so many delays and it was finally done. And I just remember I actually cried when it was delivered. I was like, it's not enough. Like I've done some good here, I've made some impact here, but what about the rest of the places that I haven't helped and I haven't done anything, and there's still so much to do. So I think we really have to be careful when we start to wear our heart on our sleeve a little bit, that we take care of ourselves and remember what you do. In a way, it's never enough because the world always has more problems and there are always other people that you want to help that you can't. But at some stage, you just have to be happy with what you can do and you have to find a way to be proud of that. So I often say, this is sort of advice I give to students about deciding with your heart where you want to go, and then use your head to get there, because you can figure out pretty much anything you set your mind to if you really want to do it. And I think a lot of this process for me as well was about defining success on my own terms. I probably could have made a lot more money if I'd stayed on that corporate ladder, if I had continued to, pursue that type of business development or continuous improvement career. I didn't. I chose to follow other priorities, and I think that's really important for young people and for people in general. As our lives go on, we develop different metrics of success, and we need to pay attention to those. So I would say, after I came back from this life-changing experience in Argentina, I started to think about entrepreneurship because I thought, starting my own company is going to give me that flexibility. I can use my skills in a context that I choose and, terms that I define. And I really think that both business and engineering and entrepreneurship, they're all about solving problems. And you can decide which ones you want to solve, whether it's a problem of, a faster computer or making more money or clean water for people, whatever that might be. It's really up to you to choose which problems you want to solve. So I do run my own consulting firm right now, in case you wondered. I do use my Lean and Six Sigma skills to do process improvement, training, business systems design. I work with a really wide variety of clients, and my biggest criteria for working with clients is that I like to mash things up. I like to work with people who allow me and even challenge me to work both creatively and analytically, big picture and detail, doing good, making money, science and art, sort of mashing things up, and that's really fun for me as well. So when I started to think about the impact I wanted to make, I really felt that I can't do it all myself. There's no way I can cause all the change I want to in the world. And I really, I want to be responsible for making change. So I need to get good at mentoring and coaching other people. So that's when I started Engineer Your Life, and I work with engineering students and young engineers to help them ask themselves some of the questions that I did and help them decide what their next best steps are, whether that's pursuing a career in the corporate or industrial world, doing some volunteering, maybe even learning an instrument. I mean, whatever it is that brings them to their best selves and helps them feel like they're contributing something to the world and they're really challenging themselves. I also volunteer with PEO. There's a great organization called TechnoServe, which I encourage you to look up because they do sort of business solutions to poverty. They're almost like MBA without borders kind of idea. And then I also volunteer with the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, which is virtual mentoring. I work with a woman in Kenya who has her own snack business, and it's entrepreneurs around the world just helping each other. So that's pretty cool. I also work with Engineers Without Borders, doing a venture called Engineers of Tomorrow. So we want to shift the profession to meet the challenges of the 21st century, and the way that we choose to do that is by talking to kids about engineering today. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. One of the things I do as part of my work with Engineers of Tomorrow is we run National Engineering Month, and I know that your chapter is familiar with National Engineering Month. It's a month-long celebration of engineering and technology, and it involves some events with professionals, many events with kids, some with students, sort of older, young people at the university and high school age. And basically we want them to be inspired. We want them to have a hands-on experience of engineering and technology that makes them say, wow, this is cool. This is a place for me. You know, this is something I could really do. So our theme, our slogan is Make a World of Difference, and talking about not just the what of engineering, but also the why. So I'll just take the time to do a little plug here. We do use social media. We know that those tech-savvy young people are all online, and we want them to know about what we're doing. We have a lot of articles and different features, and sometimes it's fun little things, or sometimes it's a bit more educational. NEMontario.ca, so that's National Engineering Month Ontario.ca. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. So encourage you or the young people in your lives to check us out. March is, as I speak, not far away. And one thing I like to say a lot is that it doesn't just matter the what of technology, but it's also the why. So I think a lot of you will recognize this is a popsicle stick bridge. This is a very popular activity during National Engineering Month. And this is one way to do it, where you sort of have the bridge. It's in the middle of nowhere. You're not really sure why it is where it is. We like to add in another component that says, now we have this bridge, this design that's really good. Where are we going to put it? And now, how is that going to affect the people that are around us? This is an example from one of our BC partners, our Engineers Without Borders chapter, put this together, and they developed this exercise to accompany the bridge building. So now we have the kids who really like to build things, and we also engage the kids who are thinking now about the human impact. How is this going to affect how people drive to work in the morning? How is this going to affect how long it takes someone to get to the hospital, which could be, you know, a very vital thing. It really affects people's health and safety. It's not just about building a bridge in and of itself. It's really about the impact in shaping people's lives. So we really want to make sure that we're appealing to a diverse group of kids. We think that building a more diverse engineering profession in the future is really important, and we're talking about gender diversity and socioeconomic diversity and ethnic diversity and cultural diversity and even diversity of strengths, you know, diversity in their ways of thinking, having introverted, extroverted, communicative, and creative, as well as the more, logical and analytical type people. We want all of those people to be represented within the engineering profession. And we have this basic sort of formula. We say we have the activity, which is the bridge building in this case, and we have the message, which is that, look, this bridge affects people's lives. That will appeal to a different type of students, and that will sort of broaden the appeal. Sort of thinking with a marketing lens now as far as the brand of engineering and how we can pull that across. So that's basically our theory of the change that we want to create. We're also lucky enough to work on an amazing program called Engineer in Residence. And so if there are any engineers in training or PEngs watching at this point, if you have a passion for what you do and you might like to share it with young people, we definitely consider you get involved with this. It's a volunteer program. It involves going into a classroom, and you'll partner with a teacher, and you will get the opportunity to talk with the same group of students. So you really build a relationship with that class of students throughout the school year. So you have actually, we set aside a small stipend for you to buy materials. If you want to build bridges, if you want to build towers, if you want to get them to do design challenges, you want to take them on a field trip. We encourage people to tell their own personal stories. So we really put a human face on engineering, and we help people understand that engineers are real people. They have emotions. They have, they have ambitions. They have dreams. We want these kids to see themselves in these engineering role models in front of them. Because let's face it, there really isn't a TV show or a movie about engineering that explains it. Certainly not the way there is about doctors or lawyers. There just isn't that same public presence of engineers. And there are many reasons for that, but we think that we could change that. So I spoke a little earlier about the engineering challenges, and we feel that talking about the engineering challenges is a great way to inspire the kids who want to make a difference in the world. And I think, speaking very broadly, I would say that this generation of young people has really grown up with that social conscience, that so many of them want to work on environmental issues, or they want to work on social issues. They want to help make things more fair and more safe, and they have a real motivation to make a positive difference. So these are just some examples. Engineeringchallenges.org, you can check that out to learn more about it. And here's the Canadian version, is the Montreal Engineering Declaration, which was a group of all the different engineering associations that got together and said engineers will take collective action in these areas. So health, environment, global competition, safety and security, and quality of life. And I'm not sure if the order is intentional there, but I think that that's also really interesting. That we're not just about making stuff, we're also about shaping the world that we want to see. So I'm going to switch gears now and talk a little bit about Engineers Without Borders, the organization that I'm very proud to partner with on my work in Engineers of Tomorrow. And Engineers Without Borders Canada is a really unique and I think very forward-looking organization. They embrace a systemic change model, and I'll explain a little bit with an example what that means. They really focus on sub-Saharan Africa as a place where they want to make impact. They talk about ending extreme poverty and global inequity. And when you look at some of the statistics that we're unfortunately a little bit too familiar with, 330 million people not having a clean water source, 50% of hospital beds in sub-Saharan Africa are filled with water and hygiene-related illnesses. We have a lot of the rural population that spends more than an hour per day doing water collection, and a child dies every 20 seconds due to water-related illness. So that's obviously those are very shocking statistics. What does EWB do about it? They do not drill wells in Africa. That's, I guess, the first point we want to make. When we think of development organizations or non-governmental organizations, we think sometimes about those charity projects, we'll say, about giving, filling shoeboxes with school supplies, doing things like that. That's not what Engineers Without Borders does, because they take sort of a wider look at, for example, this problem of water. So you can see here there's a woman in a village collecting water from what does not appear to be a very secure source, and certainly looks like a very difficult thing. So 1 to 2 people don't have access to clean drinking water. What are ways that we could solve that? There's certainly they can bridge the gap, provide water services, and that's definitely something that traditional NGOs have done, and have done quite a lot of, with very good intentions. But what if we zoomed out and looked at the broader system? We have the village now, and there are many wells that don't work anymore. They've been drilled, they were used for a short time, and now they've broken down. And the next NGO comes and builds another one just a short distance away. So the wear and tear points, the water points break. What can we do about that? Well, we can repair the pumps. We can make them more durable. We can make the NGOs better at installing them. So that is the type of work that EWB would do, would be in increasing the capacity of the NGOs in doing things better. Then we can take another sort of zoom out and look at the level of the district. So here we have the district water manager, and here we have the mechanics that are hired to maintain these pumps. Well, the local mechanics don't have the skills, and the district governments don't pay for the repairs because the NGOs are basically undercutting their work and doing it for them. So why would they? It's sort of a non-starter. So what can we do? We can train the pump mechanics, so we're creating the capacity and we're encouraging that self-sufficiency and creating livelihood, really, for those mechanics, and stop the NGOs from doing the government's work, because even though in that moment they feel very good about the intervention that they're doing and the impact that they're having, they're not creating sustained impact. They're not looking at the whole system. And one of the ventures that I'll talk about, we call it WATSAN within the EWB organization, works extensively with district governments to help build up their capacity and their ability to manage their own water resources. So looking at the level of the country, what do we see happening there? Well, we have the people, we have the government officials, and we see that the national government does not provide consistent services to the communities. And you know, sort of one level up from the pump mechanics, the people who are training the pump mechanics don't deliver coordinated training very consistently. Again, we see that the NGOs, with all good intentions, are kind of stopping the government from being called to action and doing their job. We need to increase the capacity of the national government and help them make more money, better tax policy. And when we look at the level of the whole country, well, agriculture could be a big moneymaker that would allow the governments to invest in their systems more effectively. But the exports can't compete because the commodities are subsidized in the West. So you start to see how from that very small piece of the puzzle where we see that one woman struggling to get her water, now you see how we fit into this globally interconnected system. And when we take another look at it, we see that if the West stopped subsidizing the agriculture and stopped selling arms, then we would not be providing, we would not be fueling this other economy that's taking money away from the agriculture. And unfortunately, we can't really point a finger away at them without pointing some back at ourselves, because if you chip into the Canada Pension Plan every week, then your investment portfolio has 15 of the world's top weapons makers in it. So you can see how this really touches us all in ways that we don't really understand. And that all connects back to this woman in the village in Africa. So EWB believes in working at all levels of this system. And that is sort of a very brief, you know, high-flying explanation rather, of the type of thing that Engineers Without Borders Canada does. They don't do technology as a rule, as an intervention. They do systemic interventions, systemic innovations to cause real impact in these systems. So there are about 40,000 members. Those are professional and student chapters, 40 all across the country. It's a national organization. We have distributed teams. We have ventures both in Africa and Canada. So my venture, Engineers of Tomorrow, is an example of a Canada-based venture. And Rashida, who will be speaking in just one moment, is going to tell us about one of the Africa-based ventures that she works on. And again, another way to explain why we want to do systems thinking, we really believe that poverty is the product of broken systems. And in order to understand it, we can't look at just one part of the puzzle. We have to zoom out and look at the whole thing and know that we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So we have sort of this large, kind of interesting looking, kind of psychedelic looking graphic here, which explains the different ways that Engineers Without Borders works. So you can see we want to shift the paradigms in global assistance development. We want to admit our failures more. We want to work in governance and rural infrastructure, bringing citizens together, reimagining education for a global society, and have more inclusive global markets. So these are all the different spaces where the ventures are working. And here's one example. Kulamela Investments discovered a while ago that in order to have collateral, a small business owner needs to have money. And so how do they get money, or how do they get collateral if they don't have money? They're sort of stuck in this loop. And microloans have done an amazing job of giving Canadians and people from other Western countries the ability to loan directly through organizations like Kiva, for example. They can loan directly to people all over the world, small amounts of money, who then it allows them to invest in their business and scale it up. Now, on the other end, there are the large business owners that are able to take loans of up to $200,000. There's this big center spot. There's this missing middle here for organizations who need a larger loan. Culamella provides that link between Canadian investors and these businesses that are already on their feet, but require just that a bit more. So here's an example. This gentleman and his guinea farm, he was able to scale up quite successfully, and with the money that Culamella was able to give to him. So I'm going to turn it over to Rashida now, because we've got a couple of slides about Voto, and this is the venture that she works on. So do you want me to make you presenter? Yeah, I will do that. Okay. Ta-da. Yes. You just have to promise to give it back when you're done.
Please go. Okay. Cool.
Oh, I'll unmute you then. There we go.
Hello? All right. So, uh-oh. Okay, so I currently work with Voto in Ghana as a software engineer, and Voto is an EWB venture that started out in Ghana. And so basically the idea behind Voto is to bridge the communication gap.
Let's make it full screen.
Cool. All right. So the idea behind Voto is to bridge the communication gap between organizations and those they serve. You know, you realize there are so many barriers to insightful communication, which includes distance, infrastructure, language, literacy, and several others. So we decided to build a technology that would enable the organizations to send SMS content or voice content to people that they want to reach out to in their own local languages. And there's a huge penetration there's a huge penetration of mobile phones in Africa and Ghana at large. The average person has 2 phones. So why not take advantage of this you know, like, huge market? And that's what we did. We built a platform, and we realized that our solution was low cost engaging and a service platform. You know, so we provide real-time results, and then in general we just we make sure that the content is interactive and in local content, so people feel connected to the messages that they receive. And since we started working, or since we rolled out our product, we've partnered with over 250 organizations. Still counting, and this was actually in back in August. So we probably have to update this. And we've reached out to 250,000 plus people. And that was just last year. So the number has probably increased to 1 million, because About 1 million, because we've run a couple of projects in different countries like Afghanistan, Uganda, Ghana, Nigeria, since and we have our platform at go.votemobile.org, so just plugging that in.
Good job.
So to talk about the features and how they solve different problems, we have the voice and SMS messaging in local languages. So we worked with UNICEF and IPA, which is Innovation for Poverty Action, for mass education in hygienic behavior. And because sometimes these kind of informations are usually in English or major languages, and in Ghana alone there are over 200 languages, which is incredible. Like 200 languages in Ghana, so most people are left out of the conversation, right? So with Voto's platform, we can reach out to lots of people, like almost everyone in the country. 200 languages, yeah. So with mass messaging using our voice platform or SMS, which can be in English or local languages, they can feel connected to the messages that they receive. And UNICEF and IPA used our tool, and they're able to reach out to lots and lots of people in different demographics. We also have an interactive voice and SMS survey platform. Now, this is the most powerful feature that we have, in a sense that we provide real-time results, and then we allow a form of engagement on the platform. So organizations can create complicated surveys and build different decision blocks for different questions and get real-time analysis of whatever data is coming in or responses are coming in. And we worked with Facebook and Renew Energies to run a survey in Ethiopia to better understand how people were using this new technology that they introduced called I've forgotten the name, but it has something to do with coal, using coal to cook, and how that affects the chemicals and everything, like how that affects their lives, and if they notice anything, any change in efficiency, does it increase productivity, just to understand how they use that new product to better improve it in different ways. And one cool project that is really dear to my heart is the maternal health project that we run in northern Ghana. We partnered with Maternal Action, that's Mama, and then Savannah Signatures, the local NGO in. Yeah, you're still showing your screen. Okay. Oh,
yeah, you're still here. Okay,
oh, cool.
There.
Now a delay.
There was a delay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No.
Okay, yeah, we're good. We're back here.
Cool. All right. So, nice. So I was talking about the project that we run in northern Ghana, and so we realized in a particular region in northern Ghana there was high mortality rate, and one of the main reasons being the women didn't have access to information on how to different healthy behaviors during pregnancy and all that. So we decided to partner with this local organization to send out messages, maternal health messages, to these women in their local languages every day, depending on their start date. And we noticed a high increase, 87% increase in mortality, low mortality rate, and then 74% of the women deliver in clinics because of the distance. So we kind of educated them better on how they can get there, get to the clinic, like the nearest clinics and everything. So this has been a really successful, project, and we impacted over 5,000 women in that region. And now we're rolling out to different regions, and hopefully we get to impact over 500,000 women by 2015.
Over how long has this project been going?
A year.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so registration, so basically for 9 months, 9 months for each woman, probably 8 to 9 months, but the whole project has been running for a year. And now, instead of giving antenatal, just antenatal, sending out antenatal messages, we're planning on, we just won a contract from Vodafone Ghana to send out postnatal messages as well.
Awesome.
So not just during the pregnancy, but afterwards. How to care for the baby and several things, which is amazing, I think. Yeah. So that's how, that they use our platform for engagement, monitoring, and evaluation. And fun fact, actually, out of the 5,000 plus women that we reached out to, 84% found it very, very and extremely useful, and they recommend it all the time. Yeah, and based on the interactive content that we have, we ask them, do you want to recommend it to someone? Yes, and they type phone numbers, and it's amazing. So we've had a lot of people register for the on the project just by word of mouth, or people finding it useful and recommending to friends. Yeah. The interesting thing is our technology, even though it started out in Ghana, can be used everywhere. It can be used in any region to solve any kind of problem, so long as there's a communication barrier. And we partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and McKinsey to run a survey in Nigeria and Uganda to find out best ways vaccines can be stored. Because the Gates Foundation is all about medical aid and like malaria and all those things. So how can they be stored in different conditions? So we created those surveys, and the cool thing is you get everything. You get all the data analyzed for you in real time, and it's amazing just to get people's feedback from different corners and different vicinities in Nigeria and Uganda. They don't have access to the internet, but they have access to their phones, so they can tell you exactly how they feel and what they think should be done. And that has been amazing, and that makes our technology a relevant one. And we've had researchers from MIT, like using our technology for different research stuff. We're not looking to raise any money.
Not at this point.
No, not now. Yeah, this was a presentation from back in August. I represented Voto with a colleague at Demo Africa. So we demoed our app, and then there were lots of investors there, so we had to state an exact amount that we wanted to raise and everything. So it was wicked.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, whoa, this is, yeah.
So you get to be not just an engineer, but you're being an entrepreneur, and you're being a humanitarian, and you're building systems, and you're coding, kind of all at the same time.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah. I mean, before I joined Voto, right now we're a 14-member team, and I joined as the fifth member. And it was interesting because I was looking forward to something that was social. So Voto just came along, and in fact, I knew Voto even before Voto started. Voto, I knew Mark Boots, because he came on an EWB mission, kind of, and Voto was born from out of EWB and all that stuff. So that was amazing. It's really cool. Yeah.
Thank you, Rashida. I think I really share, as a fellow engineer from a different part of the globe, I really identify with what you're saying about using your skills to do something that really makes a difference in the world. And I love the idea of breaking down these walls of communication using technology. And it sort of reminds me of my employee suggestion program, but on a whole other scale. That's just so inspiring and cool. So yeah, I'll bring it home if you want to switch the control back over to me. You just gotta hit just change presenter there.
Should I?
If you want
Of course.
to.
There you go.
All right. So thank you so much, Rashida. That was really cool. I think we're back over to me now. I'll start showing my screen again. So again, I've got this very high level sort of overview of Voto, and Rashida's just done a beautiful job of taking us through a much more in-depth look. So thank you so much for that. And yeah. No, I don't think so. You don't have to be. It's all right. Yeah, so I think this is just, a couple of slides of overview talking about the different ways that the Voto system is used, increasing citizen engagement, asking people for feedback, and then also allowing people to have two-way communication there. It's a lot simpler. I know. Still, I do represent your venture. I talk about this to Canadians all the time, and we're really proud of the work that you do. So there we go. There's another little idea here about how we can consult to the people who consult citizens to make decisions. Yeah, arrows are good. So this is, again, just a really high-level look at some of the things that the Engineers Without Borders ventures do. There's another one I mentioned earlier called WATSAN, that stands for Water and Sanitation, that works in Malawi. And this is at that level of district governments to help them really take control of what it is that their resources and the way that they're managing their information. And this is just sort of a cheeky spin on sponsoring an African child is one way to go. You can do that, but why would you want to build a brand new school when there's already another one there with a leaky roof? This example's from northern Ghana. Check it out. So this is another way of saying we don't just go in and help one person. We affect the systems that can help thousands. And that's how engineers have a real impact on the root cause of poverty. It's not sexy, but it works. And believe me, this type of ad is very popular with engineers because they sort of like that type of thing. So that's WATSAN. There's one more example. This another venture, a Canadian-based one called Mining Shared Value, that works together with companies, Canadian companies mostly, that have a presence in Africa and other parts of the developing world, where they see the local communities, and this is something that I really did see myself when I worked in Peru as well, that we're taking these very valuable resources out of the ground, and the people around, they benefit to a certain extent, but you might say not as much as they could or as much as they should. So the resource extraction companies are not invested in the development locally. Mostly because if they want to source their equipment or source their food for their camps or source their any kind of infrastructure, they have a choice to import from international suppliers, which they may view as more cost-effective in the short term. But what Mining Shared Value does is work with the local suppliers and work with companies to help them see the many benefits that come from procuring locally. So sourcing local suppliers, and this is anything potentially from buying food from local farmers as opposed to having it flown in, to something more substantial around equipment or infrastructure or bigger service contracts. So that's Mining Shared Value. I think I have one more here that talks about the Global Engineering Initiative that looks at experiential learning, extracurricular development. How can we change the way we're teaching our engineers such that they're more likely to be able to interact with complex problems and to give their skills to the world? So you'll see here's an example. These are several members of the EWB staff, all thinking about global engineering in ways that they can reach out through the work that they do. Part of that is talking to kids, and this is an example. You see we've got the Water for the World presentation, and this fellow is wearing a National Engineering Month shirt, which is pretty cool. And then there's the Engineering Leadership for the 21st Century portfolio. So we know that realities are changing, that our global population does not look the way it used to. Things are really shifting, and this trend of the aging population that we see in North America is simply not reflected in other parts of the world, especially Africa. And that is going to mean really different things. Our extraction industry in Canada, that has changed very, very drastically. The price of oil, again, is really changing and affecting our economy as we do. Canada has the 4th largest exportation of engineering services in the world. And so international trade and development are sort of two sides of the same coin. Engineers Without Borders Canada worked to end tide aid, which means that the money that Canada gives through, for example, CEDA or the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade is given to, for example, a country in Africa, but then we say we need to spend a certain portion of this on Canadian contractors. So we're essentially giving with strings attached. And Engineers Without Borders Canada was part of a very successful campaign that advocated for the end of tide aid back in the late 2000s. And so when we think about Canadian engineers going and working abroad, as I myself was one of them, just what are we exporting? I mean, I think we look at, obviously, our skills and our professional services. We have our ideas about the way that communities should work and the way that economies should develop locally. We have our Canadian values and our biases and our perspectives about what's good, what's acceptable, what's not good, what's not okay. And when we think about it, engineers really have the potential to be these new international development investors. And so we think that engineers at one time just thought about technology. Let's just make stuff that works. That's all we're going to think about or worry about. Over time, it's become more socially accepted that engineers not only take care of making things work, but doing so in a safe way. And I think that's something that all of us that wear an iron ring, you know, when we graduate, we understand that's part of our job, that's part of our moral responsibility to take care of the public safety and individual safety. And I certainly took that very seriously when I worked in the factory. You know, we had a near miss with one of the robots in a robot cell. One of my friends, my colleagues, got trapped in there, and it shouldn't have happened, but he almost got hit by the robot, and he would have been very seriously injured. So it wasn't my line, it wasn't my business, but I got everybody together, and we had, you know, a really good, honest talk about what we could do to change the situation. I think we all share that sort of shared sense of responsibility for each other's safety. And past that, we realized we could create successful businesses and we could create things that worked really well, but we needed to do so in a way that was sustainable. And we're talking here about environmental sustainability as well as social and economic sustainability. And how can we do something in a way that makes good use of our resources and that has outcomes that are really just and that impact people. And with our increasingly interconnected world, we're seeing those global social implications that do come through. How can we do something that not only works and is safe and is sustainable, but also creates a better world for everyone? And we propose that that is the sort of lens that an engineer should and could use when they set out to make career choices, when they make decisions on the job, and certainly when leaders decide where to allocate resources, how to recruit new grads, how to teach and learn about engineering, how we practice and license engineers, and even sort of one level higher, how do we influence public opinion? How are we changing our laws and our policies? We think it would be a great thing to have people with a science-based, engineering background getting into law and getting into politics and understanding how we can shape our world, again, using the political system and using laws and using policy to change the way that things work. That's sort of a big picture perspective for the engineering profession that the global engineering sees for the future. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation on Engineers Without Borders Canada. I'm very, very pleased that you were interested enough to sit through this talk with Rashida and I. And I, for one, think that this was a really cool opportunity to tag team with a fellow EWB sister who works on a different part of the same big problem. It's really cool to see that. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.